Yeah.
There
There you
go.
go.
We're good now.
Yeah. Okay, so and then I'm gonna just read our mission statement as we get into, as we're going through the UAMPs and all these, the project, the budget, all of these things. We just kind of look back at our mission statement and just focus on what we're trying to do. And so the mission statement is Kaysville City Power and Light's mission is to provide reliable electricity with superior customer service at a competitive price to the residents and businesses in Kaysville City. So with that, we'll move to the next action, which is approval of minutes from March. So did everyone have a chance to look at those? Have any comments, questions? So I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So with that, I'll turn the time over to you, Bruce, to kind of walk us through the carbon-free project.
Okay. All right. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read that and kind of understands what we're doing. But basically, trying to get our move our megawatt subscription from 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts. And the reason is to cover our coal resources that are going to be disappearing in the near future. So, and the reason for doing it right now is because, and Nathan, if I misspeak, make sure you jump in there, but the Department of Energy is funding half of this whole project. So they've been having calls to UAMPS every week, wondering where everybody's at, with NuScale, with the people producing the modules, and us trying to find out what our subscription level is. They have a lot of money invested, and before they go on, they want to make sure, there's people that have signed documents for, certain amount of subscription before they, keep spending more money. So that's the biggest thing. And then the JUMP program, the Department of Energy is going to purchase and pay for everything for that first module. So that takes the first of a kind risk away from us. And they're going to use that, and it's going to be is it a 15-year contract? 10 to 15 years. The contract hasn't been signed yet exactly, right? We don't know it for sure, but about a 15-year contract. And when that's up, whoever's in that now for that first 60 megawatts, well, actually, 60 megawatts, will get a percentage of that, what they call the JUMP module. When they're done with it, there won't be any debt service or anything on it, right? So it's going to be at a really low price. So that's our incentive to get our subscription where we want it now and take advantage of getting that low-cost power for that JUMP module in the future. So that's basically the reason we want to do it. So, and as you guys all already know, I don't need to tell you, but as coal goes away, we really don't have, and they're after natural gas next. So there's no base load, So that's what we're trying to do. We want to keep our our portfolio diverse and want to keep spread out. We want all our eggs in one basket. So that's why we're only taking 5 megawatts of that at this time. So that's basically the overview. Go ahead.
So Bruce, quick question. You talked about that the DOE would pay for half. So specifically, when we're saying half, is that half of the overall cost being all of the debt service and then the remainder of that half being ongoing maintenance? When we say half, what are we speaking about?
Okay, well, they're paying for half of the whole entire project, and NuScale is paying for a quarter of it.
For the quarter of it.
A quarter of it. So we're only into it for a quarter of it.
Okay.
That JUMP module, they're going to pay all the upfront costs, all the fees for it.
That's the licensing process.
Yeah, licensing through. Yeah, development
Yes,
costs.
yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Good to know.
what they're going through.
Right,
now.
development costs.
Not ongoing.
Yeah, not ongoing. That's to get it up and running and started. That first module, though, they're going to pay all the debt service and everything on that. So when that contract runs up and it comes back to us, then we'll just have to be paying the O&M and the fuel costs. Those costs,
So-
no debt service.
O&M and fuel costs on that on an ongoing basis. How does that compare to cost structure that we see for our coal resources and natural gas resources now? Do we have an estimate for that?
It's hard to say. It's not.
I'd imagine it's going to be cost comparative. I'm not sure.
It is. So the nuclear are
costs are pretty significant for nuclear, we know the whole project. O&M is probably typically a bigger slice than a typical coal plant just because of the administrative costs and things associated with that. But the fuel component is much less than a typical coal plant. So overall, the O&M would be pretty comparable to standard thermal resource. But most of that's going to be O&M and a small sliver of that's the fuel.
Okay.
You have security and things that are
And then as,
higher there too.
and then
so.
as far as kind of, with treatment of spent fuel and that type of stuff, like what's the, I mean, is the cost, is that cost baked into it as well? Because I'm assuming that we'd have that as part of the project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's baked into the O&M cost.
Is it? Okay.
And and the rods stay on site, in containers on site. They don't go anywhere.
All right.
So you're not paying to, to ship them somewhere and have them disposed of either, so.
Okay. And from what we saw in the great information you sent across, by the way, was very helpful. So in terms of the actual load displacement there, we were saying that we were trying to get to the 5 megawatts. Is that correct?
Yes.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 megawatts to try to, we're gonna lose San Juan. We only have 1.5 meg of that, if you saw.
Yep.
We're gonna lose that in into 2021,
2020,
right?
yep.
I said 22, but it's gonna probably be before that, and then depending on the political climate and other factors.
What will happen with Hunter 2 and everything?
Hunter
agreed.
2
Yep.
could go, I know it's not gonna last through the next decade, that for sure, so.
2032 in the IRP, but
That's,
I
yeah,
hope it-
that's
I hope it lasts
consistent
that
with
long.
what I've heard.
be accelerated pretty quickly.
Yep.
I mean, the risk is
So we hope it goes that long because it's a great resource, so. But we have, load growth and things too that we're picking up.
Load growth from a city perspective is
Yes.
what you're saying. So
Yeah.
how are we balanced right now for that? I mean, it's kind of a corollary question for this project, right? But I'm just trying to get a sense.
Right.
We're trying to
But-
bring this stuff on, and we'll obviously not see any benefits from this additional capacity until, what would the year be on that?
2020, year they're gonna have it up and going, was it 2027, 26?
right now, COD first launch will be late 2026, but the rest of the launch.
And UAMPS participants would be able to see capacity from it at that point in time?
Not the first module the Department of Energy is taking, so the second module.
The second
is when we
module,
start
right.
getting resource.
2027 timeframe?
Yes.
So what's our overlap then in terms of, because 2027, like you just said, and we're going to have, probably 3 or 4 years there where we may have our coal fleet or our coal resources gone. So what are we thinking about there? I mean,
Well-
how do we bridge that?
Right now,
Power
well,
purchases,
and that's the hard part, yeah, most of the purchases on the open market, but, so you have to think about now, we have a certain amount of resource, right?
Yeah.
Total resource, but it depends on which plant's running, it, every hour, every 15 minutes it changes as
different.
far as what's running,
Totally
what's
different.
going on. So we have capacity. If everything was up and going, we'd have, we're about probably 40, I should grab that list, but probably in the, right on the 45, 50 megawatt range, right? So, and then in the summer,
UAMPS has pretty good clarity in the forward market.
Yeah.
For the next 5 to 7 years, there's just good liquidity and transparency for those market purchases.
To be able to bridge that gap as we need.
bridge that
Yep,
gap,
yep,
exactly.
perfect.
and it's only,
I don't know to what extent Kaysville participates in that bridge or need.
right, well, we only have, if everything's up and running, we only have 3 short times during the summer that we're short.
Right.
So the rest of the time, we're, long on, for the rest of the year,
yeah,
so.
our resource,
it's trying to-
yeah.
So, yeah, we could look at a summer, high load product, in those years to cover that, so.
Mm-hmm. And with our intention here, as far as the project is concerned, I mean, we're obviously, the intent here is to get our sense for, to make a motion for the city council to approve and move forward here. Is this just intent? Is this intent to sign something that we're going to be locked into as a city? Like what are we being bound to?
This is a power sales contract. There are options to get out at every licensing agreement period, right, is the time frame. that you can, you could get out, but then you would be responsible, like I said in my email, for whatever we were, that we owed to that point, so.
How frequently are those periods, Bruce?
Well, let's see, did I send you I didn't send you this.
You may have sent it, and I apologize if I should have seen that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, we didn't get this.
We didn't.
Thank you, Bruce.
You had it all printed out and ready.
Nice, ready to go.
Okay, so if we sign up for 5 megawatts now, the next, I guess, off-ramp, it looks like there's an August 2019, but it would probably be May of 2020.
2020,
Most
yeah.
likely, yeah.
Then you have a June of 2023, and then whatever you're in after that, is that the last off-ramp, basically?
I believe that's probably the last
That's
off-ramp,
it.
because there's no other transition.
And what,
Years later.
and what recourse do we have? I mean, if DOE is part of their R&D on this, if things start to, have issues or significant delays, what kind of recourse will we have?
Well, for the first 15 years, the DOE is responsible for the capital cost and their share of the operations and maintenance costs. So, that particular unit,
So really from us, it's just commitment up front that we'll participate at some point in the future, but there's no capital coming in at all, okay? All right.
Well, we are spending money right now.
They're
It's not.
charging, but we're not
huge
spending
amount.
anything. We're not paying for anything yet. That's all gonna be capitalized in the bonds
Oh.
later.
Okay.
Yeah, we do, everybody
It sounds like we're
owes money.
accumulating, so like 5% of 25% of the total licensing cost, is that? Because it sounds like DOE's doing half, and then
And they're doing
New-
a
is
quarter
it New
of
Scale's
it.
doing
Basically, it's a quarter of it.
25%, so a quarter of that, and then we own 5% as a city. So it ends up being kind of cut down that way. Is that how?
Yeah, it's not,
it's a work, there's budget and finance.
Mm-hmm.
As well for the city of Kaysville, I don't know what's the cost.
yeah.
So it's kind of a shared cash flow.
So Bruce, what,
Yeah, I don't have that one.
what do you think, obviously we were sitting at 1.8 and we've already agreed to that. What do you think the reasoning with the switch from going from 1.8 to 5, what do you feel like?
Well, really, we got to step back. We're really on the hook right now and have been since the start for 7.5 megawatts. When we talked about it a year or whatever ago, you guys decided you wanted to sit back and watch it and go down to 1 megawatt. Well, we haven't been in any other licensing period, so we're still, our percentage right now is 7.5 megawatts. Is
Okay.
really what it is. We signed for 1,000, but with the licensing period hasn't, lapsed since then. So we're still really 7.5 right now.
Okay.
And this, I think Doug was saying like 6 cents is the forecasted.
Yeah, they have a clause in there that
Kilowatt
about the
hour.
pricing that has to be, was it the max pricing,
In which contract?
the price of on our contract for the 6.5 or?
Not the power sales contract.
No, not that, but no, what they,
So UAMPS will have a EPC development agreement with New Scale and the EPC contractor in this case. That's expected to be for. And so we have an economic competitive test concept built into that contract whereby New Scale 4 needs to meet certain cost thresholds. If they don't meet that economic competitive test, UAMPS can walk away at that point. Or, for whatever reason, it's a nickel above that, their UAMPS can, the board of directors can make a decision to say, we'll proceed with that type of pricing mechanism at this point.
is it threshold 6.5 right now? Is that what is it 6.5 cents or
It started out 6.5 cents, we're shooting for 5.5.
5.5?
That contract has not been, that's really going to be part of the next step.
Yeah.
in this process, is finalize that contract.
So, all right, quick question on this. So
On the second page of this handout that you gave us, down at assumption number 4, there's a cost-sharing arrangement reflected in these numbers in which DOE covers 50% of all qualified project expenditures with a $63 million cap, and New Scale covers 25% of qualified project expenditures with an $8.3 million. I think I just answered my question, because I was going to ask who's responsible for that $8.3 million cap, but it looks like it's New Scale.
New scale, and then that's what.
Okay. All right. That's why it helps to read things out loud. Right?
So like I say,
That's a really good best practice.
It is a best practice, yes.
we're going to lose, like I said, 1.5 meg of San Juan, which is not a big deal. But
No.
when we lose Hunter,
Hunter will be.
that's 5.5 megawatts right there of, a resource that's on, base load that's on
Well,
98% of the time.
I think one of the interesting things, right, is when you think about all the different types of resources you can get in your portfolio from a generation perspective, in terms of, what you get in terms of yield, in terms of consistency. I mean, this option, outside of your carbon-based, right, this is going to be one of your better,
Right, and that's.
more consistent types of things.
That's one thing with the New Scale also. They've done testing up there, the Idaho National Labs. They have a nuclear plant up there, and they do testing all the time. But they've modeled these reactors, and they follow the wind curves really well. So they're really fast to come back up and down. So they follow those models really well. We have right there in Idaho Falls. That's where we have our 6 megawatts of wind at Horse Butte Wind there too. So anyway, they're a lot better than other resources about following those, like you say, with carbon free also. So
And I don't know, we could maybe put this up here. I kind of modeled it on a 20-year analysis, and I can see we've got 47 megs in 2019. I didn't put any inflation of our load or anything on there. But if just looking at this, we're projecting, and I'm happy to put it up there if you guys want to kind of just connect that in.
Do you want
Let's swap for a second. Yeah.
Sure.
And this is not a Jordan model. This is a engineering model, fair warning. So
It'll be hard to read.
it's going to be hard to read.
It's gonna be colorful and floofy.
I just took kind of mapped it out. So basically, it's down here, but I just carried it down.
Can you see that?
Probably here, stand here.
All right.
Just carried it down, so it just shows that we have about 47 megs.
Yeah.
And I just assumed the 6.3 on the gas turbine,
Yep.
just to kind of, so we have a little bit more, probably a little more surplus right now.
let's see. Did you count do you have the Intermountain Power project in there?
I do.
We don't take any resource from that, and more than likely won't. It'll be reserved, but I wouldn't put that in your model because we won't be calling any of that back, I'm sure.
We can kill this here, but basically, this is really, so then you're undersubscribed 41. You're kind of like what you're saying, we got about a 45, and we could blow this up a little bit and show our inflation here on what we're actually growing to. Can you guys see that up there?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
fine.
So really, you're going to be undersubscribed until you hit 2025, and then when it comes on, you're really only going to get back to what you're saying.
To
And
net
then,
neutral, yeah.
and then what you're saying, right, is you're saying that we've already submitted a 1.8, so you're saying just jump back up. So you're saying your actually request is to go from. We want to just go to the 7.5. Is that what you're really asking?
I just asking for 5 now. I think we'll probably have opportunity later to adjust again. Like I say, that's why I bumped it up to 5. I wanted to get in on this jump module so we can take advantage of that cheaper power that'll come on 15 years after that, that was,
Well, and that's based on specific load replacement for what we know or what we feel we're gonna lose, right?
right, yeah, exactly.
And your percentage of the jump is based on
On your,
how
subs-
big a piece of the pie you take now.
right, all 35 participants get a portion of that depending on their,
Yeah.
their maximum load.
That makes sense.
And so just to be clear, are you not wanting the 1.8, you just wanna go to 5?
Well, the 1.8 is the jump module, which we signed that, which is gonna come on 15 years after the first module's put in.
Okay.
So we'll get that 1.8 15 years after that's put in. So it's five until that point. And like I say, I think as time goes on and if we find out Hunter's gonna close sooner, those kind of things, we can adjust, but we wouldn't be able to take advantage of that jump module if we don't act now.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. That's kind of why we want to. Really needs to be done by the end of July. Department of Energy is kind of given a hard date to find out who was signed up, so they can, like I said, told you, so they can.
Well,
That's coming up soon.
Yeah,
So they can fund it and start moving.
exactly. They want to make sure that we're in it as far as they are. You know what I mean? As far as commitment.
Yep, makes sense.
And from here, I mean, it looks like we obviously need it at the time that we need it. It could be about 11% of all of our power. I mean, obviously the risk is that 22 gets, like you're saying, gets closed down.
And that's one of the things too on that 22. That's
Hunter.
on Nebo is 22.
Yeah.
And really, I want to utilize that more too not just the peak hours. I'd like the more we can get that to run, get our base load. Using that, the lower the kilowatt hour price will be. So that's kind of why I didn't go to full what we're at, what we're going to lose right now. That's why I just went to the 5, kind of a happy medium for now, and we can adjust later.
Right. And what are you seeing, I guess, just pricing, so going back to pricing specific, energy market, I'm seeing base load solar plus batteries, and the energy signed 300 megs at 3.5 cents with batteries. So I know, like, it's unfair because those are half-hour batteries, but is this the time? I mean, is this the time to secure some of these other loads that we're going to be light on, is my question. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do this, I'm just saying.
Right,
your
no, yeah.
base load at 8
Additional
cents,
opportunities,
ish, I think they said 6 to 8 is where the range was on this, but we're seeing 3.5 on other stuff.
Yeah, well, like I say, that's why I want an all resource portfolio. I don't want all our eggs in one basket. So yeah, I'd like to really look into the battery storage, But yeah, that 3.5 cents, does that have the disposal and everything figured in that price too? We've heard some horror stories from other members at UAMPS about how many millions of dollars it costs to get rid of batteries. So anyway.
Do you know that, Nathan, roughly, where it's pricing?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of information out there.
That could be a subsidized price too.
It's gonna take a while to mature the batteries, but, I mean, if you look, if you watch the California ISO, they track, all their resources. They have a special graph that tracks, their battery dispatch, basically. And all these batteries are built to kind of fill in that resource on the back end of that duck curve where, after solar's ramped off and you're still trying to ramp up, your thermal resources, kind of help fill that gap, this time of the afternoon, this time of the evening. But what they're finding out is it's really, really flat across the day. It's just kind of, it's just support. It's just, they're finding they're using it more for the system support, voltage support, things of that nature. It's not being dispatched for an energy reason. So not that there's not a value to that, but at least at this point, we're not seeing how it's being utilized for what it was originally intended for.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to have batteries that were, good for 3 hours or so to help the peak. So
What about your base load geo? Where's that price roughly? Geothermal? Like, why would nuclear versus geo pricing? Where do you think that comes in?
And what was the question?
Like base load geothermal in comparison to nuclear?
Geothermal?
Yeah.
It's still such a small sliver. I mean, it's a small sliver. It's just when you look in the West, it's a good baseload resource.
Okay.
Some of these units individually can be pretty large.
Right.
The geysers in California, one time was really large. Individual cities could have geothermal. That would be a big chunk of their portfolio, but overall, unless it's just a small sliver.
Okay. Because, I mean, my only concern, right, looking at this is just that we keep our rates competitive, right? If we look at this and if we're paying, and I've been the EPC contractor and I know overages, right? I know how this is gonna go, and especially where it's new.
It will, yeah.
If it shoots to the higher side, I think it's smart to keep it down to, 10 or 11%. I think that's probably the right amount, but I'm just saying, Geo's probably pricing in 7-cent range right now would be my guess. So I think as we're looking at those resources, we just need to be strategic. The risk in that project in my mind is just I know that you could step out, right? But I think that the risk really is that price goes to 11 cents and, maybe by then 11 cents is a good deal, but today's market, 11 cents is pretty high.
And all these resources have different value characteristics. The CPP project, for example, will have the ability to ramp and come down, has black start capabilities, and the new emerging Western markets, EIM, things like that, where they pay essentially a locational marginal price. The CPP will provide other benefits that you might not have with some of these other renewable resources. It really is a backstop. It's a firm resource, and so to have that kind of capacity, we expect, in the emerging markets, value to be placed on that. But it's still an emerging market in the West, right?
Sure.
So, that's another one of those values that's hard to, reflect in that intrinsic price. There's these other extrinsic benefits. And so we would expect, as these markets emerge, to see a value recognized for that. So, whether that's $1 or $20, that doesn't even speak to the renewable benefits. There's carbon taxes. Obviously, you're not gonna have that geothermal, but
Sure.
But other extrinsic values.
What I think would be helpful, and I'm just going to point to Jordan because I know his capabilities. I'd just be curious, and I'm not saying anything other than just out of curiosity, right? Like, if I'm looking at replacing a base load coal plant at 5.4 megs, and I'm just saying we just replace it 1-to-1, what are we paying? Just to kind of give everybody an idea, what do we pay for base load coal today? What's our kilowatt hour on that?
Well, that's what I was telling you. That's why I want the 100 plant to run for a long time, because it's about 3.5 cents right now, because the debt service has been paid off for about the last 6 years. But yeah, we wish I'd run forever, but with the political climate, it could go sooner than later.
Because I'm thinking if we just had a price per kilowatt hour, Jordan, I know that you could kind of see what that is, right? But basically, if we could show every year what our price per kilowatt hour was, because the concern on this side would be that, we're going to have a huge, in that year, if you go from 3.5 to 11 cents, then I think we're all going to realize.
We'll feel it.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I think if you were to compare it to your options, it's hard to find a deal that's going to be 3.5 cents for a brand new plant, because I think part of that price is that the debt service is paid off.
That's the reason
It's
it's
much
3.5
cheaper at this
cents, yeah.
point. So if you're comparing to a brand new coal plant or a brand new natural gas plant, I think 6 cents, 5.5 cents is a good target comparatively, and I think the DOE is helping get it to that point.
That's a lever with NuScale. This plant's not gonna work if we're not gonna be competitive with natural gas.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you're following, when we got out of IPP back in IPP3 back in 2009, they were coming after coal. But back then we saw, they're not coming after coal, they're coming after carbon. If they come after coal now, when all the coal's gone, they're gonna come after natural gas. And we're kind of seeing that right now. The mayor Garcetti in LA just said so, I mean, we had LA in our offices the other day, because all their repowering projects on their natural gas projects just got axed. They're scrambling. They're like, yes, Mayor, okay, but behind the scenes, they're running around with, chickens with their heads cut off because they don't know what they're gonna replace these resources with. And so, they can get on a carbon-free resource that's in the middle of development, there might be some value to that. So, that, while our lever with NuScale is, natural gas, behind the scenes, we see the risk with natural gas. I mean, there's risk with all these projects, but that risk with natural gas right now, we don't know what it is. If there's a carbon tax, whatever the case may be. So you just have to, make your own assumptions. At UAMPS, we've made ours, and we think that's a big risk right now.
Yeah, and I think just to be clear, on the 3.5, what I'm seeing is solar and battery is pricing at 3.5 cents brand new today. NV Energy contracted 300 megs, 540 megawatt hours of battery storage at 3.5. So kind of
The combined, the two? Wow.
And so what Nathan's saying is, the hard part is there's a lot of blurs in what is a base load, right? So we have to be careful. And just to be clear, I think that this is probably the right amount so that we're on the same page? I do, but I do think that we should run as a commission here. We should just understand, if this is the year that we have to hit rates with, 10% of our rates go up from 3 cents to 9 cents, then I think we just need to probably, I'm thinking as easy as, our average rate is 5 cents right here as an example, 5 cents, so that we can just have that sensitivity so that we're prepping. Because I think that solar's been good at, showing that you can get lower pricing than what really is there. And then I think as it gets through there, you go through the EPC, you build these things out. I think the prices do come up. So I think that there is just some BS there. But either way, I think we just need to know what's going to happen, and maybe we forecast those worst case that we can kind of, as we go into your budget side of things that you've modeled out with these guys, is just kind of prepare for that.
Right, yeah, a lot of constraints with doing, our own solar too. Where are you gonna put it? How much space does even a megawatt of solar cover? What's the footprint? And then you gotta have batteries. We don't need any power during the middle of the day, so the battery is the only, is the only reason would need the solar, is to charge the batteries, because we need it during peak time. We don't need it during the middle of the day.
Yeah, and all I would just caution, right, is there is so much tech in here that is changing in the next, we're looking out for, and we have the off ramps, but I can just tell you, all the numbers and all the things that I'm dealing with it day in and day out. I've saw 12-hour batteries at 4 cents, right? So there are a lot of tech coming, but I think as for us to be prepared, I think it just kind of just say, hey, what happens if our rates are,
And that's why I say we're not taking that much and not accounting for, getting what we're going to need in the future, you know what I mean? As far as we're leaving room for those extra technologies, that's why I don't want to oversubscribe to it.
Right. Yeah, I think that the amount is clearly the right amount.
I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah, so I totally agree, Brock, with everything you're saying. And the reason I'm comfortable with this 5 megawatts for now is come, June of 2023, I mean, we're going to keep evaluating what's out there. And if there's something that comes up that's 3.5 cents and seems like it'd be better, I mean, we still have options here. Right. So we're not necessarily
like I say, I like the idea of having some of everything,
I think as of today where we sit, I think this is a good proposal just to keep us on this path and not lose this opportunity. And but I look forward to seeing, I mean, that's 3.5 cents for a solar and battery project combined would be huge, and it's a lot less than what I've heard, but I would love to, I'd love to have some time dedicated to some of these other innovative projects.
The concern that I would raise on that, though, Jordan and Brock, that we do have to be mindful of is that with some of these technological projects, sometimes there are external, factors in terms of tax incentives that help to make the cost lower. I don't know that that's the case. I don't know if that's baked into the 3 cents for what you're seeing now, but that may not be around, in 5 years' time, right? And so we do have to make sure we are checking into that.
Well, there's a lot of factors that influence and move this whole
Exactly.
thing too. I
Yeah.
mean, economy, I mean, who's in office.
yeah,
I mean,
policy.
there's policy, politics.
All
there's-
of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts on this.
Yeah.
So I guess to kind of get a baseline here, and I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're doing, laying down some framework and stuff. I feel comfortable with moving this in that direction, so. But of course, being mindful to the eye that, I mean,
just like you
honest to goodness, I mean, these numbers could change next year,
Absolutely.
so, but,
I really think we need to look into, especially the battery side of it, because right now, like I say, during the middle of the day, with all the solar we already have on rooftops and we have too much resource run during the middle of the day, you charge batteries with that and then use that during your peak times. I think that's where we get the most bang for the buck too.
Right.
For
If we get it to
Absolutely.
that point, yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And I'll send out the article. So 8-Minute Energy is the installer, and it's published. It's through MV Energy. You can see the rates and what they're doing. But to that point, and to the tax credit point, that's why I'm almost saying I think you may want to look at securing some of those sooner rather than later, because solar plus
That'll
storage
change.
is on a step down on the federal tax credits.
Right.
So it's 30% federal, then it goes minus 4% next year, and it's gonna step down, and then it'll be at 10%. So I think what's really lucky for us right now is it's actually a good time to want to buy these contracts
right.
and be aggressive in that market. So I think that, if we're looking at that and then saying, if we buy this battery contract and then saying, okay, we have a risk of 8 cents over here, I think that we could actually be strategic and, reduce our risk substantially by, putting a little bit of solar in there and putting a little bit of that in there, and I think today, the market today is pretty hot for really low, you take storage out and what are you seeing? What's solar at without storage today?
We just saw it today. They're down to
We just talked about a
20,
contract today.
23. Was it $23?
25-year contract, $23. Sorry, an escalator, but,
At the bus though too. I mean,
What's
but
that?
I said at the bus too. That's not delivered, but yeah, but it's
Here,
it's
3
cheap.
cents roughly.
But like I say,
Here.
we don't need it during the day. That's the batteries.
There's plenty.
Right. Anyway, so, okay, I guess, so the recommendation is, you wanted to repeat that and then maybe we'll.
Yeah, recommendation to step up from 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts on the power sales contract for this carbon-free power project, and also approve up to 1.825 or whatever the decimal points go out to on the jump module. So up to that point, because people change their subscription, all those numbers are going to change. They're going to go up and down, but that should be the maximum. So up to that point. So there's two, and take to council, there are 2 contracts that I'll have to sign. So
So we're looking for a bona fide motion then on this to take it to city council.
yes.
Okay, all right. All right.
Does anyone want to repeat that and then?
I dare anybody to.
Could we get it written down?
You got a cue card?
So what was the jump model, 1.?
1.8.
The jump to 1.8, there's
1.825.
1.825, whatever it was.
And then 5 megawatts. So
Right.
I'll
Yeah,
make
yeah.
the motion then to up our subscription to 5 megawatts and also to solidify the 1.825 megawatts in the jump module.
Up
Second
to,
the
yes.
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I should have asked this question before we did that, but just real quick, how is the DOE doing?
It's too late now, man.
I mean, that's already going to change my
It doesn't
decision,
matter. It's too late.
but how are they doing on overall subscription? I think, what is it, 600 megawatt or The
Actually,
total-
actually 720 is what the.
720 and-
Yeah, they've upgraded the efficiency of them, so it went from 50 megawatts to 60 megawatts each unit, and there's 12
So our
units. So it'll
going
be
to 1 to
720.
5 is going to
We're-
help a little
we're-
bit, but how are they doing on the?
Internally in UAMPS, they're at 150, 152, right? And so they want to get that 150 points so the DOE felt comfortable to move on. And then they have other people, a lot of other people interested in it, and they're going to solicit other people and let other people into the project after that point.
Okay. So still a lot of power to
It's
sell.
UAMPS, it's actually marketing it, not the
Yeah.
DOE.
Right,
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we're.
I have heard Doug Hunter on the trail talking a lot about this. So.
Evangelist.
Yeah.
I need to excuse myself, but I will be at the city council meeting, if you have any questions or
Okay.
hang on for that.
All right, thanks, Nathan. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
When will this be going to the city council?
Thursday.
This week?
Yeah, it's already on the agenda, so.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so let's move to the next item, and I don't know, was Dean planning to come on in, do you know?
I texted him, I've been at UMS all day, but he said he talked to Jordan, and Jordan, they decided that he wasn't quite done with it, right? Jordan, is that what he was?
Yeah, we were
Budget.
hoping to have the 2019 budget numbers to go over when we get into our rate model, just to be looking forward. He's really close, it sounds like. He's just not quite there yet, so unfortunately, we won't have Dean, but we don't have to take a lot of time on this, but I have the model here, what we did last time, and then I thought maybe I'd just do a quick overview, and once we have updated numbers, we'll plug these in, but I guess just to get familiar with it, we can take a few minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a great
go
idea.
through it.
And I think just way of background, right,
I think I got
Get locked out on you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
we set these rates, so what we're really just focused on is how close are we, how far off are we, so we just kind of want to have that feedback, and so Jordan's been working on that, and so, yeah, I think just going through that model and showing everyone what we had planned on.
Yeah, I
It's helpful.
apologize, it's a little small. Let's see, I'll zoom in a little bit. It's not a fancy touchscreen like Brock's Bruce, but
I thought that was in the budget. Is that in there, touchscreen?
maybe it is a touchscreen.
There's no subsidy for that.
No,
My
no,
kids think
no.
everything's a touchscreen now.
No. Sorry.
So this is what we worked on extensively a couple years ago in response to the net metering policy and solar in the city, and we kind of dissected up the costs. And so I'll walk through this main dashboard here and kind of where these numbers come from real quick. And then once we get updated numbers for the year-end 28, well, I guess it'd be year-end June of 2019.
19, yeah.
And then we'll have a budget going forward through 2020. We can use that information to kind of refresh all this, and that's what we're waiting on. But this rose-colored section up here is the revenue requirement portion, and so we separated this into a few steps, 3 steps really. So the first goal is to figure out how much revenue does the utility need to operate safely and reliably and be healthy. And so we look at the financials and the forecast coming up, customer growth, customer usage patterns, and figure out, okay, how much is it going to cost to operate this? And so this column D is based on historical operations here. And so at this point, when we modeled this, we were at $14 million annually. I think that would have been year-end June of 2017, probably, when we were looking at that. And then we also need to build in, so this is kind of OpEx here, and then we need capital to, I think at the time we were looking at substation projects to upgrade some substation infrastructure. So we have some capital that we got from the 5-year plan. So we'll need to kind of refresh that, look forward 5 years and decide, is there additional capital requirements we're going to need, and take those into account as well. And then, so these are all annual numbers, by the way. So we were doing $360,000 annually for these capital projects. And then we have a cash reserves policy, so we want to have a certain amount of cash on hand to maintain the right metrics that creditors watch and look at. And so we build all that up, and ultimately we were shooting for collecting $14.7 million of revenue for the utility.
And just on that cash reserve, it's also worth noting that UAMPS, I don't remember how much they keep in reserve for us, but
Well, we have, yeah, I think right now we have $1.2 million in our retention fund down there.
okay, perfect.
With UAMPS.
Yes,
Okay,
at
right,
UAMPS for, yeah, mostly for rate stabilization and things, for keeping that
Right, okay.
unexpected things.
So I just went on the website earlier today and looked at the June 2018 historical numbers, and I think, or the budget, and the budget ended June of 2019, and it is around $17 million that Dean had modeled for the utility. So you can see 14.7 is increased
Yeah.
quite a bit. So, but there's also customer growth coming in, so there are some revenues just naturally coming in. So it's not all that just expenses are going up. So
Right.
what we need to look at is how much is revenue just organically growing versus how much are costs growing, and figure out where we're at that way, so.
That 1.2 million that we have with UAMPS, is that, is there like a minimum balance that, like in escrow that we have with them? It's-
Everybody, it's your choice whether to bring it back to
Okay.
utility, what to do with it, it's just sitting there. And I need to go grab it, I think I said that back to transpose, I think it's 2.1 million we have in there right now. I can go back and go grab things so I don't lie to you.
That number just increased.
It
rather
did.
Sizably.
Just like that.
Just like,
Well, and the reason I
back and
asked that,
forth
right,
one,
is again, factoring into our overall cost, right? That's if there is some sort of escrow requirement or something like that, right, for rate stabilization and everything, I mean, that's an implied cost, right?
Right.
To be able to maintain that, so,
that doesn't seem to be the case, though.
based on what you're
That-
saying,
Yeah,
no.
that it's not in escrow,
Yeah.
okay.
And Jordan, I think you would remember this. I think we have to have something for like the bonds. I think it's like the next couple tabs, but we decided, I can't remember what our ratio was that we would keep in cash reserves. Do you remember that off chance?
Yeah, there is a cash reserve schedule. Not sure if it's in here. Let me
That's
take
part
a
of our
look.
bond covenants, or?
There was a reason, and I'm drawing a blank of why we kept it, but I know we modeled in here
Yeah.
the amount that, and I don't know if just Dean said this is the amount we have to have, or.
Yeah, there is some requirement that we need to maintain, and that's what this 280,000 is.
Minimum 90 days operating
Yeah, there's,
cost of what the minimum was, and just have to look back at our,
Yeah, so that's an implied part of the cost structure, right? Just to maintain that.
yeah,
may
as
have-
long as these different things, our bond ratings, the things that's,
based on
they
that,
want to
yeah.
look at,
Yep.
yeah, make sure you have a minimum of that. So,
yeah. So that'll be part of the analysis. We'll reach out and ask Dean to check those balances and make sure we're good.
Wait, Jordan,
We're
will you
probably much
clarif-
more engaged as a board than most boards would be
This
doing all
is
this.
awesome.
But,
Will you clarify, you mentioned something about like the organic growth, like say population versus like
Yeah.
cannibalizing, or what, how did you account for that? Or are you saying that's something that needs to be accounted for?
it needs to be accounted for.
Okay, so that's not in
That's
this
kind
tool.
of in this next section. So once we know how much revenue we need based on just expenses, and that's all this is expenses, and then also the capital to put this in. The next part of the equation is, how many customers do we have and how much energy are they using? Because then I have billing determinants that I'm going to take this revenue and I'm going to spread it over these billing determinants, because we bill by kilowatt hour. If you're a commercial customer, we bill by demand, and so how much demand charges are there? And Kaysville's growing, and so even if we don't change the rates at all today, a new customer moving in should result in incremental revenue. There's also incremental costs there as well, but
An extension.
hopefully the incremental revenue is higher than the incremental costs, and so we have this kind of organic growth in revenue to help keep up with the growth in costs. But things like just general inflation, there's not going to be revenue there coming in unless customers are increasing their usage.
Understood.
per customer, but really customers are getting more efficient. I mean, what do you see, Bruce? Are customers
Yes.
increasing, or are they getting more efficient?
Getting more
More
efficient.
efficient.
So our billing
Right.
determinants are shrinking too. So maybe revenue's not growing. Maybe we're getting new what that's all doing, but that's something we'll look at the most recent 12 months we have when we get the data from Dean on what did customers use in the last 12 months. And if we wanted to get really fancy, which we probably won't, but you know, we've got a guy in my department that does statistical modeling, and he's projecting, you know, how much less natural gas are customers using each year, and he's doing a 5-year plan on gas usage. But we probably won't get in, we'll just take the last 12 months and assume, you know, that's probably going to represent close to what the next 12 months will be. So if we wanted to be conservative, we could shrink it a little bit and try to get that trend in there.
Well, right, because that lends credence to the whole idea that households are becoming more efficient. You know,
Yeah.
energy consumption is down, which is kind of dichotomous to the thought that, oh, well, our city's growing and we should be seeing more revenue and more, you know, growth from a revenue standpoint. But in actuality, houses and households and everything, you know, LED lighting, all that stuff. I
The
mean,
biggest
so-
growth you'd see is from commercial, right? I mean, in terms of.
Yeah, I think
usage.
that would lend, yeah.
And I think what, you know, just to, as we're looking at this model, you know, I would just challenge that the reason that we have to look at the other model is because, you know, I think if you look back at 100 years, you know, models were pretty consistent for 100 years, and then you look at how many times rate changes have happened in the last 10 years,
Decade,
right?
right, yeah.
Or even probably 5 years, is the risk that we run. And, you know, this is kind of why we started here too, and Jordan has it all modeled on, you know, what happens with solar and some things like that. But we have to be on the forefront of other technologies as well that are coming in here, because it does have an impact, and just making sure that, you know, that those costs are, you know, appropriated to each person fairly. So he's, you know, has all that in here, and he'll walk you through all that. But I would just, you know, as we're working through this, just keep in mind the way that you blow the model up is we put 10-cent power in, and, you know, my solar array is 3 cent, and that's where, you know, we were 3 years ago, right? 2 years ago. So.
So this next box is, so we start with the pie. I like to think of the revenue requirement as the total pie, and then we have different kinds of customers in the city that use energy differently and have different requirements and costs. And so we need to divide that pie up into how much revenue are we going to collect from each kind of customer class, is what we call them. So we have a residential class, a commercial class that's really split into 3 commercial groups based on size, and then an industrial class, which is I think we just have one very large customer in the city. And so this section here divvies up the customer charges by customer class. And so we're going to collect $1 million of the $15 million we talked about through the customer charge. So everyone has a basic service fee, and the kind of costs we put into the basic service fee are what are driven by a new customer coming onto the system. And so there's a meter on their house, there's meter reading. Even if they don't use any energy at all, we have those costs, and so you're going to pay that $8 per month just to do that, even if you don't use any electricity, because that's what it costs the city to put a meter on your house. So that's what these meter charges are. And then down here in this next section is where we get into the actual rates. And we don't need to get into too much detail, but by the time we go through each class, so here on row 54 is the residential rate and their customer charge. And so we would collect $9,464,000 from the residential class based on their costs. And then the commercial is almost $5 million. And then we have the industrial coming in at a $200,000 bill. And then we have lights for the city. And they're on the bottom row is the 14.7 million I need to
number
collect
again.
total.
Right, yeah.
So we tie it back to the revenue requirement. And then finally, down here, we take those dollars by class and come up with, okay, in the residential, how much, here's the kilowatt hours I expect residents to use during the year. So we had 97.5 million kilowatt hours that we were going to bill. And that's where if customers got more efficient, maybe they only used 90 million. So if that were the case, I would under collect. So it's conservative to estimate that there will be some efficiencies happening, and so these are the rates.
Weather effects, that's what I see the most when I'm looking year to year, you
Yeah,
know.
and
What the
weather's
weather
hard to
did, how hot
predict.
it was, how cold it was.
Yeah, and it's been a little
changes.
bit moderate this summer, so we might
Yeah.
see revenue lower than we anticipated. So all of these next sections are different customer classes and what the rates are, and these are what the city council approved at the end of 2017 or 2018, probably the end of 2018. And then we have a customer impact tab where we can kind of see as we plug in costs and rates. We've got Rocky Mountain Power in here just for comparison's sake. We like to say we're a little bit less expensive than our neighbors, but as we update the costs, we'll be able to see, okay, here's the current rates where we're at today. The proposed rates are all linked in, and this calculates an annual bill for the customer. So when we did this model last time, it ended up being a 4% increase. The cool thing, though, was that we're 13% lower than most of the state. And so we could install a fiber optic network and still be lower than.
Let's not, we don't need to
don't need
start
to get
talking
into
about
that.
fiber optics. So that's nice to bring that in.
Sorry, Stra. It's just it's an interesting how
Curtis
much
put me-
lower we are than there. But,
All right, so we've got a couple hours here. Let's
So that's the whole model, and then we had some time of use modeling in here as well, and that's related to the solar discussion. And so we heard about the duck curve a little bit. If solar's peaking in the middle of the day when we don't need power, because customers don't use a lot of power in the middle of the day compared to in the evening when they're coming home from work.
Right.
We wanted to reflect the value of that peak time on the credit we're giving for solar to help kind of equalize the costs a little better. So that's in this as well. But I don't think I'll go into a whole lot more depth for tonight, but that's kind of an overview.
Can you send this to us or to me? Or
Yeah.
Can you, is
Yep,
that
I'll
something
forward
we
it
can
to this
share?
group.
Okay, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I actually think we should do it like old times, and we got 3 more hours.
Go
and
to
just
10 p.m.
Go through it all, I think, in detail.
Cell by cell.
Yeah.
If you only had the numbers, huh, Jordan, we could do that.
So I did send to you the customer calculation, bill calculation, and I think I have that in your email, Bruce, but I don't want to get into your email and find it. Maybe
You want me to look,
if you
find it?
want to pull it up real quick,
bet.
and then I'll just show that for a couple of minutes, and then we'll be done. I think I sent it right before I sent this.
And I think while he's pulling that up too, as we're looking through this, some of the things that other utilities are doing is they're taking those triggers going from time of day usage, and they're hitting you with 15-minute intervals.
Yeah.
So your bill's going to get very complicated very quickly.
Right.
People are not going to know how to
How to decipher through, or how to sift through it all.
32,000 points of where's our bill. So I think we're ahead of the curve, and that's what I would tell you is Jordan can kind of go through that with the time of day when we have all the other stuff. That is where we're headed. And Bruce, refresh my memory. When were we targeting? And Alan, I can't remember when we were targeting to go to the time of day use. I know we talked of moving into that, but I can't remember. I know it was after the meters.
After the AMI, then we can go from that point. So
But you're more than halfway done installing
yes,
them, aren't
about 5,800 meters installed to this point.
So more like about 60%.
59, yeah, right.
59.30.
59, yeah.
It was this morning.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
So these are the time of use rates that we presented and were approved by the council. And we will probably need to refresh these, but this is the spreadsheet we designed for customers to be able to come on and see how their bill would be impacted. And so these orange columns are kind of where the input happens, and a customer can take their most recent 12 months of data. And I think what we have in here is a typical customer, or the median customer in Kaysville.
Right.
So it opens up, and they can immediately see what the median customer looks like. And if they're higher or lower, they could change these numbers. This first column is your total kilowatt hours over a year. And then this one, the second one is how much you use in our peak time. So our peak over the 12 months we looked at always happened between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. So we chose that 4-hour window to be the peak usage time. So this customer used 364 kilowatt hours over the year during the hours of 5 to 9 p.m. And that's important because what we reflect in the rates here is you can see your average rate is 7 cents overall, but then that peak rate is 14 cents. And so if you can manage your usage at the peak time to be efficient, and maybe you don't need to dry your clothes right then, or there's ways to kind of manage that. This 14 cents gives customers that, I guess, transparency that that's an expensive time for the city. And so that will start being reflected.
So you're showing an average use there, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's,
Yeah,
that's.
that's
an
the
This is
average.
the typical customer, so it's the median
Well,
customer.
But at the
in
bottom,
Kaysville.
it's not a total, that's an average, isn't it?
This down here?
Yes.
That's a total for.
Oh, this is the
for
max
year.
down here, so.
That's for your coincident peak during that time frame?
Yeah, sorry, I spoke incorrectly. So this was the max peak that
Oh, okay.
happened, 364. And so, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but
why
that
we
number
did
should
that.
reflect something completely, that should reflect the total of.
That should
that
probably be the
entire-
total.
Yeah.
And I think. I need
That's
to
what it
fix
looks
that.
like the rest of
Other
those are.
column does total at the bottom.
That is total,
Yeah.
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 I must have been playing around and didn't fix that, so that should be a total. Yep, so thanks, Alan, if I sum that up, I'll see the sum showing up down here. Let's just do
Well,
that.
regardless though, there you go.
I'll see our formulas. That's all right, we can fix that.
Okay.
But in any case, a customer can estimate, so if I'm increasing my usage in August to 15,000 or 1,500, it automatically will update their bill throughout here, and maybe I can cut back in the peak time to 150, and this should all calculate.
Which
So-
it did, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so now my bill is lower than it was. And then down here, we have a solar section, and I've noticed that my neighbors and friends who put solar up are very in the details and are estimating production and watching, when the solar panels go up, they're watching, okay, how's that coming on? And so they should have some estimates here on what their production will look like. And the same kind of thing, the credit is higher in the peak time. So if the solar panels are positioned well to give us, the city, power in that valuable time, then they get a much higher rate
Return,
for
yeah.
that time, so.
And I think just pointing on those two rates, right? I think it'd be beneficial, and I'm only saying Jordan because I know Jordan's capabilities, but I can't remember everybody's backgrounds. I think that there might be others that, if I remember right, that have the, accounting backgrounds and things like that, right? But what I think would be helpful is we're taking the 10.8, and it's not dynamic to the resources. So I think if you were to tie those two together,
Yeah, that's a
then
good point.
then I think you would actually see it, because what we're actually doing with that 10.8 is we're incentivizing here people to come onto the grid, and if they can be cheaper than us, then we want to buy power from them in replacement of another, exactly, of other resources. So I think if that was dynamic with that last sheet, then I think that would be complete, and that is where we're headed. And then the only other thing that I would say that I think we should look at here as well, and I'm writing all these down, but I think that there was a way that the billing, we had to adjust something on the billings and where that was, and just kind of true that up. It'd be a good time when we're looking at, that was the Vivint comment
Yep.
from the legal, is just the way that I think we projected it here in our numbers, and then the way that we had to do it with the billing. I know that they just wanted us to kind of true that up and kind of see where that was. Maybe.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up. briefly mentioned it in an email to the group. So when we were doing all this, you can see I was netting it monthly in here. So even up here for a consumption, if your kilowatt hours you demanded that month were 234 or 230 during the hours of 5 to 9, and then you come down here for production and you produced 14, what this model kind of assumes is that that production from the hours of 5 to 9 happened at the same time as your consumption between 5 to 9.
Right.
But really, at a certain second, you may not have been using any of your solar. And what I was mistaken in modeling it this way, and what I could use, I guess, feedback or help with is, I guess I don't have a model that would show a customer, how much you're actually offsetting your consumption in real time. I think that'd be really hard to do a one-size-fits-all kind of prediction. So maybe what we need to do is throw a bunch of statements in here like, here's the assumptions of this thing. Your particular case, it will depend on how much it actually matches up. Because in real time, if you're not using your solar, it's going to go back on at the lower rate. And that's how it's really billed in the real world. And we just weren't as clear on that as I think we should have been. So there was some confusion on that. So I think it's fixed in the net metering agreement now. The language in there reflects that clearly. And so when we post this calculator, I think it's a matter of just making sure the language is correct.
agree.
So.
Yeah.
Could there be an area of like frequently asked questions or something, and that could be one? Because if
Yeah.
I were a solar customer, that would be my question. Well, how do I?
Why is my bill higher than this calculator tells me?
Right.
Right.
Because it's an estimate.
And then it's a model,
'cause it's an
yes.
estimate, right.
Yeah.
Estimated calculator.
But even
It's
just
an
saying
estimate.
that it's a model as an estimate, it's
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah, I think that's a good point. So,
It's a really good point.
so that's all for the rate section, I think.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. Gary, we'll turn the time over to you for the,
Can I ask a question about this rates? I'm assuming we've approved a budget or are about to approve a budget
Yeah,
that did not have a rate increase.
that is correct, yes.
Okay. Do we know how much surplus revenue we had last year?
I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. I can find out for you. We can talk to Dean, I'm sure, about it. So,
And then my next question is it enough to fund capital upgrades that we expect to be doing over
I have the budget numbers at home. I'll look them over. So, try to get an idea to answer those questions. So I
Okay.
can do that. Yeah, you
All
bet.
right.
And we can answer those, Dean can answer them in emails too. We have
Yeah, that's
specific
true,
questions.
too.
We don't have to wait till
Sure,
the next
but-
meeting, so you could have that
Well,
information.
no, I
soon.
mean, I'd go home and look it up tonight or, tomorrow or something. I mean, it's not, my life's not that exciting. So, it's, pour through the budget.
Here's what I'm getting at, is if we are 13% below Rocky Mountain, but we're not collecting enough money
Enough
to
money
fund
to fund
projects
that,
we
right.
should be funding, then we ought to be looking at a rate increase.
Right. To offset that.
Yeah, yeah, to keep up with what we
Right.
need to be doing.
Right.
and I think just out of principle, what is our tax rate difference? Do you know that, Jordan? Because we should be a certain amount below them just because they're going to pay tax and we're not.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I'm not sure how much, so there's two big items Rocky Mountain Power has, and that's that they have shareholders that they earn a return for their shareholders, regulated return, probably around 10% on their rate base, and then they also have 21% tax rate that we don't have. So that makes it, I guess, hard for them to get down at the level that we're at. So
Well, I would just.
I don't know what the materiality is on
Yeah,
that.
I don't know either. Okay. But to your point, it's well taken, is if we're still lower, effectively lower, and we need to do improvements, it would be an appropriate time.
We'd have to up rates. I mean, that's,
That's right.
I mean,
Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Bruce, did you get the number for UAMPS? Was it
Yeah,
2.1?
it was a 2.1. Transpose those.
Okay,
All right.
perfect.
That's a lot better. 2.1
Yes.
is a lot better.
it's a lot better, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so moving on then, Gary, so we'll turn it over to you on the 5 to 10 year capital improvement plan.
Okay, thank you. It was about a year ago or so, we were doing an impact fee facilities plan. That's what I handed out today, is what I included in that. That is just a portion of the report. The rest of the report can be found on our website under government, and then you go to impact fees plan, and it'll have our department in there. That will cover those facilities or capital improvements that we identified just as Kaysville City Power, that where we need to improve on. So from my understanding, that all those capital improvements were included into impact fee, of raising the impact fees to help cover the capital improvements, is the way I understand it. I could be wrong. If you want more clarification, probably need to ask Dean on that. But going through that portion of the handout that I gave to you guys, top portion of it is our distribution. It's areas that we find that our wire size is not capable of additional capacity. So we identified them, wrote them down, and then also in our substation, or they call it generation here, it's improvements in our substations, additional capacity improvements, and
So quick question,
portions.
Gary, on the fiscal year where you have these projected out to, I'm assuming that's when you would be looking to do the improvements, is that correct?
Yes.
And we're comfortable that, so say like on the Fairfield to 400 East upsize wire for capacity there, that what we have will be workable until 2023?
Yes.
In that instance? Okay.
Yeah. This is also to help increase our capability of feeding loads from different substations too.
Yes, which is essential.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
So that's the reason why this is listed here. Our next item on the agenda will refer to a study that we're partaking in. This could change due to that study.
Right.
They might indicate a higher importancy in certain areas
Right, so
than
we
what
may
I
have
have,
to move some things closer, right?
or
Yeah.
rearrange or adjust as needed. I do want to make one note that upgrade the substation reclosers, that is completed. We have done that. That included the relays along with them. That is completed. And then also our advanced metering. We are hopefully be completed this year, so that will be completed too.
Is there a regular schedule on some of these things, like the recloser replacement and everything, that we would anticipate going forward?
Not really just the year, just not exact. It's
Right.
just what we kind of gathered, and that's the reason why I was
It's just
grateful for doing the study, because that'll identify exactly when we need it, I believe.
that point in time.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like recurring, maintenance, because some of this stuff definitely has, I mean, some of it's got a long life, right? Some of this equipment will. Some of it due to technology upgrades, on certain pieces of equipment in the system and in the network are going to require, other pieces to be looked at and evaluated. I was just curious if that was part of the analysis. No?
I believe it is part of the analysis that we have planned on
Okay.
participating in, but I will verify with that, though.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you look at technology 10 years ago, how much of it's antiquated and totally obsolete.
Yeah.
I mean, I see where you're coming from with that, so.
And did we move forward? I know, Alan, you made the recommendation. Did we, I think we did move forward with someone. Who are we moving forward with that study?
That's our next item that I'd like to talk about on the
Okay,
agenda.
okay.
Unless you want to combine the two.
Either way,
Okay.
however you want.
We were able to sit down with ECI, had a board member participate in the meeting. We are recommending that to City Council this Thursday to get approved. Once approved, we will contact them and proceed with the study. It was a little bit more than we anticipated, so we had to wait until this year's budget to get approved or have money in the budget for. So it is on this Thursday's agenda for council.
I think that's just a consent item, too.
Yes.
How long will it take to complete the study and get the?
Good thing I wrote this down. They anticipate building the model will take 6 to 8 weeks, and then doing the analysis will take another 6 to 8 weeks. So you're looking anywhere between 12 to 16 weeks.
And then the
per plan.
deliverable that we anticipate from them, right, that we would contract for them is what? I mean, is it basically just their projected state of what needs are and what we need to be looking at doing? Are they gonna be giving us alternatives and scenarios? Like, what are we expecting from them?
I'm expecting to have them identify our weak links, where we need to improve
Okay.
on our whole system,
Okay, just across the board.
across the board. And that's the reason why the cost was a little bit more
More.
than what we anticipated, because when we had the meeting, we kind of added some additional requirements that we wanted to see too, just not our main circuits. We want to see everything, so.
Right. Okay.
And kind of why I'm blurring these two, but is it fair to think through, if I was just looking at this, they would just essentially take this, they'd restructure it in priority of, you really do have a weak point, and adjust this accordingly? Is that the fair way to
Well,
think through that?
that's where, once the council approves, or if they do approve, I would like to sit down with them. I'd like to have them tell me where my weak links are due to their study and due to their calculations.
Yeah.
Is what I want to see. I don't want to see them take mine,
Yep.
Right.
that I know that we have a weak link.
Yeah, you've got two things to look
Yeah,
at there.
two things to look at. Mine that we,
Second
or
opinion.
ours that we came up with
Yeah.
that we know of. And I'd like to see if they come up with the same thing, or maybe same thing in different way, or
Right.
that's the direction I would like to go.
And when I was talking about kind of scenarios and options, so they'll point out weak links, are they also going to provide recommendations around that, or is that just kind of?
I believe so. They're going to
Okay.
recommend we need to do this, or we need to do that.
So I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is going to get approved without question. So on Thursday. So moving forward from that, then, when does it look like we're going to actually dig into this and get the ball rolling on this? Within a matter of
The
a week or
next
two?
day, Friday, once
Oh,
it's
okay.
approved, I'm going to call them
Start
and
the
say,
model.
"Hey, let's get started."
Get going now.
That's what I needed to know.
I've been in contact with him because I did want to verify the price didn't change from last time we got the quote proposal from them.
Right.
So he is aware that I am presenting it to council, or it'll be on the council agenda
Okay.
for this Thursday. So he is aware that
And
once it's approved,
Yeah.
I'd like to him start it immediately.
Right. And if any of you guys are, really inclined to, all the information is on the city council agenda, so just go to the city's website, pull up this Thursday's, and it's in the whole packet. There's a handful of pages and stuff that outline and delineate everything, and so it's a lot of really great information, so, but kind of outlines the whole idea and purpose of what's going on here, so, yeah.
Okay, then my only question then would be on it, if they would give us the model, because that's when I can show you how to do that instead of Jordan's model. That's where I can kind of come in and go through that, because I think that, whatever it is, the increased model and the value is if we take I'm assuming that they're taking a load flow analysis and they're running a bunch of different scenarios on these and kind of figuring out, like you're saying, where our choke points are and those types of things. But if they will give us that model, and then as we do upgrades and we keep it up to date, or even if we need to update from that point, it's going to be in all of our best interest to have that model
Use that
as
as
a
a baseline.
They
Yeah.
will share the model with you, but you have to have the software to drive it, and it's pretty pricey.
I have it.
Yeah, that'll be.
Well,
I know, isn't that the point of their job?
I personally have it on this
That's why it's
touchscreen.
Yeah.
costing us so much to get that.
Yes.
Well, it depends on which software they're using. I think ECI has 2 or 3 different options. we can run it in this one or that one, whichever one you prefer.
They'll
I
gladly
have
sell it
three,
to us,
too.
I'm sure.
They will, yes.
Yeah, so there's three. It's ETAP, Easy Power, and SKM. And I have all three of those.
Oh,
So,
I believe I had our IT department contact them, and they determine on which model or which program to use, so we'll be able to access it.
okay. I have it, though.
For
so if you need
continuity,
it,
too.
you can use it.
Right, yeah, okay. All right.
And they're expensive.
Yeah.
Really expensive.
Yes.
So, okay, so do you need a motion? You're good? We don't have to do anything there?
This is a work
No,
item, so.
This is
this
work item,
already-
and also this
This is already
Good.
going.
does not require recommendation
No.
from the board.
Okay, and then was there anything, since we blurred it back, is there anything on this chart that he passed out?
No.
Are you doing the wire upsize in-house, or are you contracting that out? Just curious.
At this point in time, it would have to be contract out due to lack of equipment, space, material. We would love to, but we have, and we will address that when we go through our walkthrough on our facilities. It'll explain itself. Good way of putting it.
Visual explanation.
When are we thinking of doing that, by the way?
So that's the next item I wanted to move into, is just really where we're, we kind of tried to condense it so that it was, not meeting as frequently and trying to push that through. So I guess I just open that up as far as, we have a few items that we need to kind of circulate still. As far as the resources, the budget, maybe we're looking at some other resources to add on, when we have a whole list of other items. So the question would be, that was on the agenda, those four are on the agenda. Do we want to find a time now? Or do you want to just kind of, as they come in? I mean, I'm going to throw that out to, we've done it both ways, so I'm going to throw it out to you guys to tell me what you want to do, and we can do it either way. So.
Do you know, my opinion on it, I'd like to do is kind of like they come in. I mean, I think that we can plan it out all we want to, and then things end up going to pot, and, and then.
Yeah.
So, but I think, as these do come in and stuff, and they're topical, and they're, they're valid, and,
I agree.
it's current and stuff, so.
Yeah.
And as far as tour and facilities is concerned, I think I wouldn't mind waiting until like maybe September or something when it's not
hot
90
outside.
degrees outside.
I would agree.
Hey, it could be 115 degrees like it is in Phoenix.
I know.
I think I got a sunburn walk into my car today.
So,
I think.
but that's my opinion on that. I think it's a good idea to just kind of as they come in to get them on the agenda and
At that
go
point in
from
time.
there. Yeah.
I definitely want to be respectful of your guys' time.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
I mean, these things are important though too. I mean, that's what we're here for, and that's what we signed up to do. So.
So then I think probably the next trigger, correct me if I'm wrong, would be the budget with Dean. Maybe just ping us when that's ready, or you guys just ping us when that's ready, and then that'll
Yeah.
trigger this. And then I think from that point, then any other agenda items, I like to give Stacy like 3 days to get this thing posted, to see how fast she can really work.
that's good.
Yeah. 3 days. Solid 3 days. But no, if you could just ping us and just anything you want on that agenda, it's usually, the ideal time is a week prior.
Yeah,
and
that's
so just
usually
kinda,
Makes sense.
yeah, we have our own little agreement, but, that's how I get those extra 4 days in there. Yeah. But anyway, long story short, if a week prior you guys just ping us, we'll just use that as a trigger, then we'll catch the next meeting, and then we'll add these other items in, and then go from there.
All right.
So,
Sounds great.
Good deal.
okay. So, last comments.
No, there's no public either. So.
Okay, so I think take a motion for adjourn the meeting.
I'll move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, not bad. Good.